Thank you so much for tuning in today with the Interview Accelerator podcast. I am your host, Travis Patterson, interview consultant and expert. Today I have the pleasure of having the subject matter expert, Corey Smith. We're going to talk about negotiating salaries. To kind of give you a little insight about who Corey Smith is, he's the co-founder of Good People, which is a diversity and consulting firm and also a diversity staffing firm. He's a former VP of Early Exposure at OHub, which is the Opportunity Hub, which focuses on college students and young professionals in technology. How are you doing today, Corey?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself, Travis?
Man, I'm so grateful to have you on today because we've had a lot of conversation around this, and having job interviewers require this type of information. I'm just so happy and grateful to have you on to kind of shed light on the topic. So I really appreciate you for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I am the co-founder of Good People. Good People is a diversity firm. I have been working in the diversity space now for about 7 to 8 years. Good People, we focus on just leveling the playing field in general, and the way that we do that is that we work at the top of the funnel as far as creating opportunities for Black and brown folks at corporations and tech companies, from senior management director to executive suite. We also do consulting with executives as well, mainly like your D&I chief officers at companies. We work really closely with them, and we also train, like right now with the stuff that's going on in the world. A lot of companies are training their entire staff just to be sensitive to, to different cultures, and we kind of help them navigate through that.
Oh, wow. That is super important to have that in the back pocket, especially, with different executives at different levels and different businesses. I've had my own experiences when it comes to not working in a diverse area or a diverse company, and not. For me, it didn't have anything to do exactly with the fact that no one looked like me. It was more so that what they were into and what they talked about, I can tell that it just wasn't a good fit as far as how the office conversation was. And I just felt like they were kind of turning a blind eye to the fact that, some of the stuff that they talked about was a little sensitive, and they just were, I guess, desensitizing the entire subject. So, man, I'm happy that you do that and you bring in that information for those people to open up that thought process.
It's just really about understanding each other and creating emotional intelligence. Throw that word around a lot, but it actually is something that's super needed in the workplace, and we just try to create safe workspaces.
One of the questions that I get oftentimes, especially doing interview coaching, is how do you know, as it pertains to salary negotiating, how do you know what you should ask for?
Initially, it starts with conversations like this, right? Because a lot of people in general, but especially Black and brown folks, we don't even know that negotiation is available. Like we are sometimes just happy to be at the table, and then later on we're looking back in hindsight, and we're not. I still feel like as a people we don't think that this has anything to do with it. But if your colleague that came in at the same time as you in the exact same role thought to negotiate and you didn't, right, then you're already playing behind. You're behind the 8 ball. So stuff like Glassdoor is a great, resource to just look up, the company and the position that you're in, to find, things out like that. Something that I also do, man, people don't want to talk about their salary. I think that we need to do that more often, to be honest with you. It's like, not politically correct to have those conversations, but I think that we also should be, networking with people that are in our field and just having, real conversations. And I'm not just talking about just like you're only my colleague, but, when you befriend someone and you really get to know them, like we just have to have more open conversations in general. And I think it starts with conversations like the one that we're having right now.
I definitely agree with that, 1,000%. And it seems like when you talk about money, of course, a lot of human resources department will tell you your salary is yours, your pay wage is yours. Don't talk about your salary to your other coworkers, which I get it because it creates confusion, strife, and it even may cause discord in the workplace where your performance level of some teammates may decrease because they feel like they're not valued as highly as their coworker that's right beside them making $3 more an hour or even $10,000 more a year. But not being afraid of having that conversation, asking the right questions to the right people can really uplift the entire corporation. I think that different businesses could benefit from that if they weren't in that type of mindset to hold that back. But at least if we're not putting that weight on the employer, then we can give it to the employees or even the candidates prior. How do you even get into the conversation? How do you ask for an increase? So how do you ask for the negotiation? How do you actually just break into it?
I mean, I think the best time to do it, first of all, is when you're coming in. I mean, a lot of companies will do like annual reviews, and people get annual increase in pay in some cases not. But I think when you walk, when you come through the door, if you've done your research, like when you're interviewing with the company, for myself personally, I didn't see it this way initially, but after having a conversation with students at over 370 different colleges, like I interview pretty well. My interviewing skills are really like you have to know your value. So I'm asking you probably just as much questions as you're asking me. Like,
Right.
I want to know why should I work at this company, right? And then let's just be honest. A big part of that is pay, right? So I've never been shy of this conversation.
Yeah.
Some companies are going to have like a flat salary, especially like in sales and stuff like that, and then you can increase it based on your work that you put in. But salary-based positions are usually always negotiable. So when you get deep in the interviewing stage and you think that this company is really interested in hiring you, then you need to, throw out there what you're looking at, because you should have already asked them at this point, what the salary is that they're paying, what if it's sales, what's the commission structure, if it's bonus, what's the bonus structure. Like, we can't shy away from these conversations. So if you bring these things up on the front end, and you already know what they're thinking, and then you got to do your research, like I mentioned, like the Glassdoor or through, personal network or whatever the case is. You do your research, and then you compare the two. And if they're not where they need to be at, then we need to have that conversation. And you mentioned earlier that, companies in HR, says your salary is your salary. Let's just be honest. Like, negotiation is two sides, right? One side is always, one side is going to win, I should say. And at the end of the day, it's up to us to have this open communication and dialogue and talk about these things. HR can't stop you from having a conversation like this or being part of, conversations and listening to podcasts. There's stuff out there. If you research it, you will find it. And everything, to me, in my mind, at the end of the day, is a Google search away.
And I've never heard of an employer saying, hey, sign this non-disclosure agreement that says you don't talk about the salary.
Exactly. But I would say this also, though. Remember back in the days when, it's more like probably our parents' days where, they joined the union, right? The union was a place where they communicated, they kept the playing field level. These days, there's not a whole lot of unions out there, right? They still have a player union in professional sports and a lot of factory type of jobs and even acting, believe it or not. But in just corporate America, there's not a union. So they don't want us to unionize and have conversation, open dialogue, because once we come together, we win. So it's up to us to do that. So you have to go out and find that information yourself, and then you have to ask for what you are worth, period. And the worst thing they can say is no.
I remember staffing a site that had its own ecosystem. It had its own population out there. I mean, I want to say it was close to 1,500 people that worked on this one location, this one site, this manufacturing site. And when it came down to that word, like I never heard it before because this was 10 years ago. I was a lot younger and experienced, but like people would say union, and there was no unions in this location. However, they would always whisper about it. They would say, if we had a union, such and such, what are they talking about? Such as unionization. And I never understood it. Talking about unions, talking about pay, talking about race, there's always something that's oftentimes uncomfortable to talk about. And you don't understand what the problem is until you open up that line of communication. So, quick exercise, right? I'm the job, I'm the employer, and you're coming into, the interview Accelerator Inc. and you're applying for this position as head of business development or early exposure. And so talking about how do you ask for it? How do you ask for the negotiation? How do you ask for the increase in salary? How do you bring that in? So I'm going to say, Corey, your resume looks great. This was a really great conversation. I think that you'll make a good fit for our operation here. The starting salary is $50,000. How soon could you start?
Well, I personally feel like at that moment when you asked me that question, if it doesn't align with what I've already researched and what I'm already thinking in my mind, I'm going to have that just open conversation right there. So, hey, I've done some research, Mr. Manager, and this position, the average pay for this position is about $55,000, right? And then the high end, the people that are, do really well in this position, they're more about 60. My background has proven that I do really well at what I do, and I think my value is closer to $60,000. And you can do this two ways. You can have this conversation verbally, but I think that it's smarter to actually have it written, just like they have to send you a written offer. That's when you can counter back through email and just, first of all, build a value, right? Earn the right, as we say. Why I'm worth this money, where I got this from. I didn't get it out the sky. I actually did research. List some of those sources, and then ask for what you're worth. And then that's when the conversation starts. And it's okay to come in high or start high because it's called a negotiation for a reason. You all are probably going to end up meeting somewhere in the middle. So you have to keep that in mind as well. And think about this. Large corporations, they're not fools, right? So they're anticipating the negotiation. So even the amount that they throw out there, they're starting low because that's, they're smart. That's the reason why they have scaled and grew the way that they have. And they have attorneys that are helping them. They have analysts. They have all of that in place when they even offer you that offer, right? So you are already, the deck stacked against you from the beginning because you don't have all that. But they got this little magical thing now called Google where you can search and you can find out the same information that, that they spent all this money to figure out, but they're banking on that. And I'm going to go back to, diversity.
Right.
We notice a lot, all of us, for the most part, and I'm talking about women versus men. I'm talking about, black and brown employees, versus their counterpart being, Asian or Caucasian. We notice that we're being paid less for the exact same work, right? Let's just call a spade a spade. I believe it does, but I believe a lot of it is we're not asking for what we're worth up front, and they are, and that's the problem, and that's where we have to move the needle by having a conversation. Exactly, and it's up to us to do that, and it's up to us to do the research and figure these things out.
Man, you just that part alone, people are going to share. In fact, if you haven't shared this episode yet, go ahead and hit the share button right now. If you're listening on any platform that you're on, because that part right there, your brother, your sister, your cousin, your mother, your best friend, your groomsman that's in your wedding, your fiance, your wife, whomever, your coworkers, they need to know what Corey just spilled. You know, this training, this episode wasn't even intended for training. What Corey just shared, they're not teaching that in the education system. So you just got that for free, y'all. That's awesome. So, and what I notice is that, and you're right. You know, businesses are in business for a reason. They're going to make money. Every position is either going to make them money or save them money. It just can't be an expense position. So the idea in hiring the right person and getting them to get the job done for less is for the zero-sum game. They're looking for that opportunity where they're really going to get more, but in their mind, it's not about zero-sum game. They're really about winning and getting more from you than they're willing to pay for it. And I'm not trying to say every employer is like this. Obviously, you know, that's not the case. But oftentimes, every employer is in it to increase their profits and not be in the deficit. So you just have to do exactly what Corey shared with us. Speaking of diversity in salary, you know, I do want to probably just come a little bit more into that because, again, that is an uncomfortable conversation at time, but it needs to be had. But before we do that, I want to ask you, how do you use, in a real scenario, how do you use personal value to bring up your financial ask? And I think you kind of touched on it a little bit just then in the scenario. But, you know, example, you have 2 degrees. One is in a language, another one is in healthcare, and you work in healthcare, mm-hmm. but you're making, you know, $15 an hour, where you know that you should be making close to 60 to 70,000 a year, but you're around the 30s and barely scratching the 40s. How do you use your personal value as far as bringing it to the company to build up to that point where you're or positioning yourself more so to negotiate for that financial ask?
So the whole interview process, to me, the way that I look at it is you're building value throughout that process, right? It's you're selling yourself. No, you know, some people realize that they're in sales, and other people are scared to say they're in sales. But, you know, based on what you just said, every position at any company is a sales position to a certain degree. You have to prove your worth. You know, once you get the job, then you still have to figure out a way to add value to this company, or they're not going to pay you that salary. Yeah, point blank, period, right?
Yeah. So
it's very important that to answer your question, it's very important that you're selling yourself. Like, you know, when I applied for this job, I seen immediately, you know, based on my skill set, my experience, my education, I can add value to this company, and I got to make sure that they understand that and they know that, right? And myself personally, you know, you mentioned, you know, business development. I've been in some form of business development my whole life. I've always been an entrepreneur. I worked in, you know, corporation, in corporate as, you know, doing sales and managing teams and business development. So I know that I'm in sales, right? I don't have to guess about that. But, you know, people that are recruiting, they're in sales. Like, if you're not performing as a recruiter, they're going to let you go. You know what I mean? So you have to always understand when you're walking into a company, when they're giving you any amount of money, there's not a company in America, in the world, that can afford to give away money for you to sit on their clock, right? So you just have to be able to position yourself in those interviews to let them know what you're bringing to the table. And to be honest with you, you got to be honest with yourself as well. You know, when you're sitting at these companies, if you're in a position that you really don't care about, you're lackluster, like, like, let's stop wasting our time, people. Find something that you're passionate about, something that you love, and then you can speak with honesty and clarity that, hey, I am going to come in this company, and I'm going to set it on fire. I'm excited to be there. Companies love to hear that kind of excitement from the beginning, because when you're excited, you're getting them excited. Because if they're interviewing 10 other people that all claim they could do the same job as you could, why are they going to choose you? So my point of what I'm saying is that you're building the value from the beginning, right? And then I would also say this, because we're talking about negotiation, it's never too late. Once you got in there, like you may, be listening to this podcast right now and say, hey, I'm at this company. I do very well at this company, and I did not negotiate salary. So no, up front. So no, it's not like I need to go look for another job now so I can go negotiate salary. And you may, want to do that as well. But it's being able to prove your worth. So once you have the opportunity, and that's what experience is. When companies are looking at experience, they want to know what you've done in the past. Not just, hey, I was, a switchboard operator, and this, that. What did you do when you had that opportunity to be a switchboard operator? You know what I mean? Did you do something to add value to that company? And that's part of the conversation, that you're having in an interview. If you're trying to maximize the opportunity, that you have to have these conversations, but you also have to be real with yourself when you're in position, and you have to bring your all every day. And if you do that, I don't think you have any problem negotiating salary, because people know that. People want references. They want to talk to people. And if you did what you were supposed to do, you should have left a lasting impression wherever you was at, and you should be able to communicate that as well in an interview.
Wow. Oh, man, you doing readers and listeners right now are getting some good feeding. You serving it for real. You said something that it made me wonder, just, I guess, yes or no, straight up, is it better to negotiate with your current employer? So at this point, you've already accepted a job. You've been in for 6 months and or even a year, and you have not seen a raise. Your performance hasn't impacted the conversation of increasing your income. Should a person try to negotiate with their current employer, or should they consider the option of leaving that employer to get paid what they feel like they're worth at the next job?
You should absolutely, definitely. If you like your job, you like where you're at, you like the team that you are on, the grass is not always greener, you should definitely speak up and have that conversation with your current employer. And I want to give you one example of that. I think that this will hit home to everyone. I have a close friend. I'm not going to mention her name. She worked for GitHub. You familiar with GitHub?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yep. So GitHub has recently been acquired by Microsoft, right? My friend, and you even mentioned education. My friend literally got a job at GitHub, which was like a very upcoming tech company that they look for the smartest people in the world. She got a job right out of high school. Now, this friend is not the average, student coming out of high school. I'll just say that. So I'm not trying to, encourage people not to get further education, because you should, but there's so many different opportunities for that. You can go to coding boot camp if you're an engineer. You don't have to, there's different ways to get where you want to get. But she came in, first of all, she's right out of high school, so she has zero experience, right? She is literally excited, ecstatic, and happy that she got the job, okay? So, no, she did not negotiate coming in. She couldn't believe she got a job with GitHub coming, straight out of high school. So she accepted, the original offer, and she got there and she showed her work, right? She did her thing. They were super, super, super impressed with her work. So by being at a company where, most of their, employees, this is the Silicon Valley company, went to Stanford, went to Cal Berkeley, that they may have just had conversation with their family. It wasn't a lot of black folks there either. So they may have had these conversations at the kitchen table of negotiating salaries and whatnot. So most of them, they did that on the front end. She didn't do that. But once she got there and became part of that network and communicating with her colleagues, they told her, hey, you can ask for more money or you can do this. If you're at a startup that's, fully funded, you can ask for equity. So when she went back, equity, listen to me when I tell you this story. She went in and she negotiated a little bit more salary, right? And I'm going to just throw it out there. It's not the actual numbers, but let's say she was making $60,000. She went in and asked for $75,000. She could have probably asked for 85 or 90, but she decided that other portion of cash, she was going to ask for equity in the company because after talking to some of her colleagues, they had equity in the company. That was part of their negotiation, right?
Wow.
So long story short, a couple of years ago, Microsoft acquired, and she got that. They gave it to her without even thinking twice about it. Like, yes. So she's actually worth it. We are going to give her what she asked for. So she got the equity. The company got acquired by Microsoft, a couple of years after that. I want to say she's been there about 5 years. She became a millionaire instantly because she asked for equity, a multimillionaire.
So hold on, wait. Whoa. So what you're saying is she had the opportunity to say, okay, I want a $15,000 increase in my salary per year. But the conversation said, you know what, instead let me, I guess, take that $15,000 and invest it toward the equity. Just give me that amount, the equivalent, in a sense, in equity into the company.
She got both. She got cash and equity. But she was smart enough to ask for the equity. And she was like so shocked when they said yes. Like, really? Dang, I should have probably asked for more. They gave it to me so easily. But she had the opportunity. Now, this is the benefit of, to answer your question, of already being there. These people know your value at this point, right? They've seen you work. They've seen what you bring to the table. They can't afford to lose you. So, yeah, why not? Bob, Sally, and John have equity, and they're not as good as her. Why would I say no? So she got what she asked for, and because she asked for it, she's a multimillionaire now. And she still works for the company. She told me that a lot of her she told me a lot of her peers, quit when they got acquired because they were millionaires. They, went and traveled for a year and then started their own company. And some of them, went back to corporate America. But she stayed. And she stayed and kept that money in her bank and continued to build her value and got more and more and more as the years passed.
Wow. Take notes. Take notes. So not only did
true story too, guys.
Wow. So she got both the increase in her salary. If you don't ask for it, you won't get it, obviously. She got both the increase in the salary, but also acquired equity into the company because she was able to have that conversation, and she brought value to the table, and she built their relationship up while she was there already. Just to think, $7.81 an hour increase. That's $15,000 increase for the year. It's just $7.81 an hour increase onto the paycheck, but not being afraid to ask for that conversation, that increase also was matched, or it also came with $1 million acquisition for that stock or equity that she had into the company. I think people are going to be looking to probably get a little bit more detail on the story, or at least learn a little bit more about how to even ask for that. I may have to ask you on, for another episode, or I might just have them to go to your websites or go to your social media and ask you for that. So how can people get in contact with you?
People can go to our website, which is goodpeople.careers. You can also find me on LinkedIn, just Corey Smith. Just put Corey Smith /OHub and it should come up, and you can communicate to me on LinkedIn as well.
And guys, I'll be sure to make sure that that link is in the episode description below. So let's go. Let's make it happen.
Again, my name is Corey Smith, so you can just there's a contact us button on the website. You can mention my name if you have any direct questions for me. But more importantly, and also just to answer the first part of your question, Trap, yes, we could have a second episode. We could take a deeper dive into this as well. But most importantly, there's an old saying, and I just want everybody to hear this loud and clear. This is like from my great-grandfather, right? He was born right after slavery, and he used to tell me this all the time. Closed mouths don't eat. And it's simple as that when it comes to negotiating. If you don't open your mouth, you're not going to get anything. But let's just say this. Keep your mouth closed if you have not built the value in your past experience or your current experience. Woo! So it's two parts to that. You got to bring it, and then you can ask for your value.
Yeah, this is not even church, but you stepped on some toes. Corey Smith, everybody, thank you so much for coming on. It has been a great information share and value share. Corey Smith, co-founder of Good People in Diversity Consulting, Diversity Staffing, again, former VP of Early Exposure at OHub, Opportunity Hub, which focuses on college students and young professionals in technology.